Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You found the dark oak.
Today we're going to discuss the crazy, insane, totally out there stalking, maybe I would call it harassment, perhaps is a better word, of Cindy James.
Ooh. Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month, through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of earnings from our Patreon and sponsors to a nonprofit organization related to the first episode of the month. To find out how you can be part of the movement, head to thedarkoak.com, our Instagram page, The Dark Oak Podcast, or stay to the end of this episode, and we will give you all the details.
Well, thanks, Stephanie. And before we get into today's episode, we have a couple of updates for our listeners.
We do. One update is from a case that you covered, and then another one is from one I covered.
I know. It's pretty cool. This is the kind of thing we like to see here at the Dark Oak, some movement. On that note, Stephanie actually sent me an article earlier this week on the Jennifer Kesse case, where her father has come out and said that there were some items that had not been thoroughly tested at the time of Jennifer Kesse's disappearance. And we talked about that in our episode where we talked about her case. But it looks like they may be making some movement towards testing those items. So her dad is really hopeful that maybe we might get some results that could help us finally find the person who is responsible for her disappearance and, quite frankly, probable death. So fingers crossed on that. This is one that we talked about is local to Stephanie and myself. And this is one that really feels close to our hearts for several different reasons. And we would really love to see some justice for her.
Yeah, I wonder what those DNA items are. In the article, it didn't say. I'm curious if they came from the vehicle, because from what I remember of her case and the details of that, the only thing we know for sure that the assailant might have touched is that vehicle, like her car, because it was found in a parking lot that was near her apartment, but it was an apartment complex she would not have gone to herself. So the idea is someone drove her car back and left it there.
And I do believe there were items in her car that her family assumed had been tested at the time and later found out hadn't been. So I, too, am assuming it's something from her vehicle.
How amazing would it be if these items have been preserved for 20 some years? I mean, almost 20 years. She disappeared in 2006. So how wild it would be and how fortuitous if these items were preserved to the point where they can still be tested. Because how many times in these cases that go on for decades have they gone back to do DNA testing as technology advances, only to find out that the items have not been well preserved?
Right. Yeah, that's always a thorn in our side here. We're always asking why did that happen that way? So yeah,
exactly. You know, the chain of custody or water intrusion or things get lost. That's the most maddening to me, where things just get lost. So the fact that those things, they were able to find them, they're in good condition and able to be DNA tested is awesome. Like, that's awesome. And I really look forward to finding whatever they find. Now, some of these DNA tests, especially on cold cases, they can take quite a while to come back. And this particular article didn't give us any kind of indication as to how quickly the results should come back. But we'll keep everyone posted because I cannot wait.
Right. I was surprised when I learned that some places rape kits can take years to be processed. I mean, I could not believe it. Like an active rape case you have the kits done and it takes years. So in some places, these tests really do get that backed up. But hopefully sooner than later, we'll know something.
Yeah, fingers crossed for sure. And then I have an update on Paula Rosa Miranda's case. Unfortunately, this update isn't quite as hopeful as in Jennifer's case, but it's an update nonetheless. Remember us discussing Sheriff Marcos Lopez, who we felt was not doing the best job of searching for Paula in the days, weeks, and months after her disappearance?
Yes, wasn't he the one that made it to like some naughty list?
He did.
Okay.
And he was on the naughty list, but nothing that could bring criminal charges against him
Okay.
until last month.
No.
Yep. Osceola County Sheriff Marcos Lopez was arrested on racketeering charges tied to an alleged $21 million illegal gambling operation.
Wow.
Yep. He was arrested on June 5th. It actually is it's like 5 or 6 co-conspirators in this, including his estranged wife. So this goes deep. I mean, this guy, you just knew, you just smell a rat.
Right. And this was the sheriff. This was the Osceola County
The
County
Osceola
sheriff.
County Sheriff. Exactly. The one that did a terrible job of searching for Paula and then kept blowing off her family. Like, would never let anybody else look into the case, would never let anybody else look at the files, wouldn't return calls at all. So he was formally arrested. $21 million illegal gambling operation, Cynthia.
Wow.
Now, what's crazy is he had a $1 million bond, which he provided. But it became a source of contention because one of the conditions of his current bond is that any money that was used for his bond couldn't be affiliated with illegal activities.
Oh, and that's where he gets his money.
And that's where he gets the majority of his money, right? So even though someone tried to post his bond pretty quickly, he is the actual sheriff in jail.
Wow.
So like, that's not where you want to be as a sheriff, right? He's probably in there with people he could have helped arrest, or at least his officers helped arrest. So there had to be additional requirements to prove that that money came from legitimate sources. They had to show where that money came from through bank statements and income statements and property statements, and they have to verify it and then take it to the judge. So he was in jail 20 days waiting for this process to happen. Somehow they did verify that the money was legitimate. And as a condition of his bond, he also had to surrender his passport and firearms, and he has to wear a GPS monitor.
Oh, you know he is one unhappy man right now.
Yeah, but I when I found this article, again, he was just released on the 26th, and I didn't know really what was going to come of it. I sent it to Cecilia, Paola's cousin, who was kind enough to talk to us when we were covering Paola's case. I haven't heard back from her yet on what her perspective is, but the idea is that she could get Paola's case reopen and re-examine based on the shortcomings of this sheriff that was assigned to her case. And I think they have good argument to do so.
Oh, sure. So do I. Honestly, I think there's a lot of cases that will now have the potential to be reopened. But hopefully what will come with that is more people getting more cases accurately, correctly resolved.
Genuine justice. Law enforcement doing what they're supposed to do. And again, we as individuals, we as a team, we as a podcast are very supportive of law enforcement. You've been pretty open that your husband is in law enforcement, is a law enforcement officer. So we definitely support the blue, but that's not to say there aren't some, excuse my language, but turds in the punch bowl that really mess it up for the rest of them and the rest of us.
And just to be very clear, I am one of the first people to say there are some really, really bad law enforcement officers out there. So I like the good ones. I like the ones that do the right thing. Just in general, people who do the right thing, I kind of care for more than people who don't. people who don't.
That's a
But
good
to
policy, Cynthia. Let's stick with that. I like that.
right. But to me, one of the most terrifying ideas is someone in a position of power, such as law enforcement, who doesn't deserve to be.
Yep. Yep.
That's actually horrific. That's a horrific idea.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
and sadly we see it, and we see it far too often. And
Yeah.
this might be one of those cases.
Yeah. I do like the idea in Sheriff Lopez's case that I know it's idealistic and it's not always true, but I like to think that the truth will always be found out. And when we covered Pella's case, we just kept saying something's just not right here. Something's not right. Information is not as forthcoming as it should be. And it turns out there is good reason for that.
Right. Right. All right. Well, I will be holding out hope that we can get some justice for Paola too.
Yeah, for Jennifer and Paula. So good updates, and we'll try to keep them coming. We'll keep our eyes on these.
Really good updates. Now, today's case, Stephanie, I hate to tell you, probably will not end, probably ever, with a great update. And actually, today's case, I only learned once I started really diving in and researching it, but it's actually a pretty well-known case. And somehow I just never heard of it, which cases I've never heard of are pretty few and far between. And this one being a little bit more popular, it really surprised me. But I figured, well, if I've never heard of it, there's probably a good amount of our listeners who've never heard of it. So today's case is the incredible harassment story of Cindy James. So let me get into it. Cynthia Elizabeth Hack was born in Oliver, British Columbia, Canada on June 12th, 1944, to her mother, Matilda, who was a homemaker, and her father, Otto Hack, who was an English teacher and a former colonel in the Royal Canadian Air Force. Cindy was one of 6 children with 3 older brothers and 2 younger sisters. In adulthood, Cindy pursued a nursing career in Vancouver, and she enrolled in nursing school in 1962. And during this period, her father had reenlisted with the Air Force and relocated the rest of the family to France, and Cindy visited them during the holidays. And it was during this time, in letters to her family, Cindy occasionally referred to an intern that she'd met during her studies. She told her family that she and this man had become engaged, but after learning he had terminal cancer, the man committed suicide while the couple were on a skiing trip. And
Oh my gosh.
right.
And how old would she have been during that time?
She would have been around 18 years old. And unfortunately, this man was never able to meet any of her parents or siblings.
That's so traumatic.
Terribly traumatic. Terribly traumatic. First of all, the terminal cancer, as I am well aware, is terribly traumatic. But then, the loss of a loved one through them taking their own life because of a diagnosis like that. I mean, just all the things. It's all the terrible things.
Yeah, and at 18, like you're trying to be an adult and be around adult things, and then that's a real adult thing right there. That's a put your big girl panties thing on. That's hard.
It really is. In the summer of 1965, Cindy met another man, Roy Makepeace, a South African psychiatrist who was 18 years her senior. The two married on December 9th, 1966, which was the same year she graduated from nursing school. And I think rightly so. Cindy's parents were a little skeptical of the marriage due to the couple's age difference. But the two were married for about 15 years, which is a pretty good amount of time before the marriage did finally collapse.
Yeah, I think we've said it several times, and I think it's maybe generally accepted. It's not necessarily the age difference, but it's just walks of life. Like, what does a 20-something girl have in common with a 40-something-year-old man? It's just you're in different walks of life, different stages.
Right. And Cindy would have been around 21 years old. And so he would have been, 39? And she was just graduating from nursing school. He was a well-established psychiatrist. So they definitely were in different walks of life.
It has the potential to be very one-sided.
Right. Now, Cindy claimed that there was some physical abuse in the marriage, which Roy would deny, saying that he only slapped her twice, but it never escalated beyond that point.
Well, okay, I'm sorry, sir. That would be physical abuse.
Right? Right?
Like what would have constituted physical abuse if slapping someone wasn't? Oh my gosh.
I don't know, but apparently slapping your wife twice is not it in the dictionary of Roy. That does not equal abuse.
And I'm sorry, if you admitted to slapping twice, it probably means you've done more than that.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. And to me, it's the fact that he justified it. Like, oh, I only slapped her twice. I never abused her.
Sir. Get out of here. Get
Right.
out of here with that.
Well, as you mentioned, he admitted to slapping her twice, but some of Cindy's friends thought there may have been even more abuse than that going on.
Consider myself one of Cindy's friends then.
That's right. That's right. Cindy was close friends with an older couple in their 60s named Agnes and Tom Woodcock. They were almost like second parents to Cindy. And in late 1981, they noticed Cindy coming into work with injuries. One of these injuries, she had like an injured ankle. Another time she had a black eye. Another of Cindy's coworkers saw Roy coming into the office on a day that Cindy showed up with these injuries, and Roy was seen profusely apologizing. So there definitely was a community of people around Cindy who thought Roy was definitely more abusive than he even admitted to being.
I hate this.
So the decision was made for the couple to take a year-long separation, and it was just a few months into that separation that Cindy's life took a devastating turn. On October 7th, 1982, Cindy got her first of many strange phone calls. 4 days later, she got another call with just loud breathing, no words, just loud breathing. And when she hung up the phone, it rang again. And these calls kept coming. Sometimes there would be a creepy whisper on the other end, or other times there would just be silence. Once the voice on the other line said, "You can't hide." Another time it said, "I'll get you one night, Cindy." So these weren't harmless. These were not, these were not, "Is your refrigerator running?" type calls. These were scary, creepy calls meant to scare her.
Yuck.
Cindy started making a log of these calls, and they got so bad in both volume and content that Cindy felt she had no choice but to report them to Vancouver police.
Okay, so you said these calls started in 82.
Right.
So I'm trying to think what the phone system was like at that time. So in the 80s, did you have like star 67 and those like where you could call back or anything? Like, was that a thing?
I have to assume it wasn't, because in the numerous sources that I looked into, and I looked into, newspaper articles going back to when she died. I did a lot of research on this case. And like I said, it's a pretty highly covered case. There was never any mention of being able to trace these calls.
Well, and I guess I should say for any of our younger listeners, back when we all used to have landlines, there were certain things that you could do on your phone by pressing the star button and then a certain code. For instance, like I said, star 67, I think that's the correct one, right? I know there was a star 69 to like block caller ID, and there was
no, opposite.
Is it the opposite? Okay, I flip-flopped them. So star 67, you could block someone from seeing your number if you called them. But star 69, if someone had called and you didn't know who it was, you could click star 69 and it would recall the last person that called you.
Right.
And so that's what I was thinking. Is there a way that she could have tried to call this mystery person back? I remember that feature being around in the 90s, but it may not have been around in the 80s.
I have to assume it wasn't, because this was 1982. So this was the year I was born. I remember when Star 69 became known to me, and I was, of course, at the age where it would have been really interesting because was that Bradley who just called me? Did
Was that
Bradley
a
just call
suitor?
me? Yeah, like, oh my gosh, I just got a hang up call when my dad answered. Could it have been Bradley or, whoever? So Star 69, was very exciting to me to see who may have called.
But it could have
And
helped in a safety situation like this as well, unless they had figured out a way to block her from figuring out that incoming call as well.
Right. I don't think maybe Star 69 was available at the time, but
Okay.
if it was, she was never able to trace who was calling her.
Okay. All right. That's fair. And we keep saying SAR 69 and SAR 67, but honestly, I don't know what it was in British Columbia. That's what it was here in the States.
Oh, true. See? True.
Could have been a totally different code up there. Canadians, let us know.
That's right. Well, as I mentioned, Cindy did start making a log of the calls and then eventually reported them to the Vancouver police. But things just got worse. On October 15th of 1982, Cindy reported seeing someone outside of her house. And then the next morning, she woke up to a smashed porch light. She also said that someone had thrown a rock through her window and entered her home, but nothing had been taken. A few days later, she would report that someone broke into her home and slashed a pillow. Soon after that, she found her telephone cords had been cut, and then she started finding threatening notes in her mailbox that had been pieced together using magazine letters like you see in a movie.
Oh, what the heck? Slashing a pillow?
Scary, right?
Yeah, what is this?
It's scary. It's somebody trying to scare her.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, for what reason? This is awful.
Awful. A constable named Pat McBride was put on the case. And because of the sheer volume of incidents, so you have to imagine, like, he's working the case, all of this is happening to her. They're spending a lot of time together. And because of that, ultimately, the two became lovers. Cindy and Pat became lovers. And Pat even moved in with Cindy between October and December of 1982.
I feel like that may complicate things.
Well, what it does is it has a constable there at the house pretty regularly, right?
Yeah, it does. And hopefully this constable saw some of this harassment.
He did, actually. Just 2 days after moving in, one of the things that Pat noticed was a man sitting in a car behind Cindy's house. This man was Cindy's ex-husband, Roy.
Oh, and I imagine just because of the timeline between the separation and the start of the harassing phone calls, you would think it could be him. I mean, that's where my mind would go to first if I was Cindy.
Sure. Here's the thing. You just asked for a motive. Could a vengeful ex-husband, or maybe even an ex-husband who didn't want to separate, could he have motive for scaring his wife?
And not just any husband, an abusive husband.
Right. An abusive husband. Right. So
someone that you know is capable of harming you.
Right. So I think looking at Roy makes all kinds of sense, especially after Pat sees him sitting in a car right behind Cindy's house. But when Pat confronted Roy said that he was just patrolling the area for Cindy's safety.
What? Roy, we don't need that.
That's a nice ex-husband.
Sure he is.
Now, you asked if Pat saw any of these things while he was dating Cindy. And yes, while he was there, he also witnessed some of the phone calls. And he also reported finding the phone lines cut in several different places. In November of 1982, Cindy found a note taped to her car with a picture of a corpse.
Oh my gosh.
Later, she received another note that said Merry Christmas and had a picture of a woman with a slashed throat and red ink splattered all over the paper to resemble blood.
What the heck?
Like, really, truly scary. Truly scary.
And did the police decide to set up surveillance or something? I mean, someone's leaving physical notes, like physical evidence. It's not just the phone calls, right?
Right. They will. But despite all of the unwanted contact, despite police having eyes on Cindy quite often. Authorities were never able to find any fingerprints or any shreds of evidence leading to a perpetrator. Now, one night, Cindy's friend Agnes dropped by her house for a visit, but Cindy didn't answer the door. Now, Cindy was known to take a long bath every night, so Agnes assumed that's probably what she was doing, and that's why she didn't answer the door. But while Agnes was standing outside, she heard a weird noise. Agnes decided to walk around the house to see what she may have heard. She must have been very brave, because knowing what was going on with Cindy, I don't know that I would have the guts as a woman alone to just walk around a house and be like, what's going on here? But she did.
What? I think you would more. Knowing that your friend's life could actually be in danger, wouldn't you want to go and make sure your friend's okay, though?
True. Actually,
You know what
yeah,
I'm
there's
saying?
even more reason.
Yeah, because it's like, would it be scarier? Yes. But would you have more reason to make sure she's okay? Yes.
Right. Well, and it paid off. It was a good thing Agnes did this, because when she did, she found Cindy crouched down with a pair of black nylons tied tightly around her neck.
What?
Cindy told Agnes that she'd gone out to her garage to get a box, and when she did, someone grabbed her from behind, but all she was able to see were white sneakers.
Okay, Cindy needs to move. Like, move immediately.
Once again, law enforcement investigated. There was no evidence of struggle. There was nothing knocked over. Cindy's garage was neat and tidy. However, authorities did find a chair placed under a wooden crossbeam, and this caused some of the investigators to wonder if it was possible that Cindy may have tried taking her own life.
Oh.
After a few of these events, with no evidence of an outside perpetrator, no witnesses ever seeing anyone. So think about it. All of this stuff has been happening. They've never found any evidence of someone else. Nobody has ever seen anyone else. Cindy herself unable to describe who attacked her. Authorities got more and more suspicious. Was it possible Cindy was doing all of this to herself? In the end of January 1983, Cindy received a note saying, "I see you," with graphic photos of a hand holding a knife and another photo of a body bag. She was so frightened that on February 1st, 1983, Cindy moved to a new house in West Vancouver. So,
yeah, girl.
Just as you suggested, Cindy moved. Guess what happened?
Well, if this really is harassment, or heck, even if she is faking it, I suppose it followed her.
It sure did. Less than a week later, Cindy received a note saying, "Run, rabbit, run." And then this note went on once again to threaten her life. So a few months later, Cindy moved again. And that summer, Roy wanted to reunite. Making his desire known, he would come to Cindy's house, bringing her flowers. He even paid for Cindy to take a trip to Indonesia to visit her brother, who was stationed there. And soon after Cindy returned, Cindy received a note from her stalker saying, "Welcome back. Death, blood, hate, etc."
Maybe she should have just stayed in Indonesia.
She probably should have. But Roy is still in the picture, right? She's moving, but Roy is still in the picture. He knows where she lives. And even though Cindy didn't say so to him herself, she was telling the police that she thought he might be behind the attacks.
Well, I was going to ask, even though he wanted to rekindle the romance, did she feel the same?
They did not rekindle. So I'm not sure what that means.
Well, if she went to the police saying she thinks he is sending her threatening, horrible, disturbing visuals and letters, I imagine she probably didn't want to get back with him.
Well, what a good point you raised, Stephanie.
Maybe. Shot in the dark here. Shot in the dark, really.
So I'm assuming Cindy did not want to reunite because they didn't. And as you mentioned, she was going to the police saying, "Hey, I think he might be behind these attacks." So that meant every time something big happened to Cindy, police would then go and talk to Roy. Now that October, Cindy found 3 dead cats
Oh,
hanging
no.
from trees in her garden. You know, I'm a cat lady, so
Oh, no.
really bad. And they're hanging from
Oh, it's
trees in her
awful.
garden. So
It's
this
awful.
is
Awful.
serious. Attached to one of the cats was a note that said, "You're next." At this point, with the harassment escalating clearly and the police unable to figure out who was behind this, Cindy hired a private detective named Ozzy Caban to help protect her.
Good.
Ozzy ended up working with Cindy for 6 years and never once questioned the truth in Cindy's statements. Now, one of the things Ozzy did for Cindy was provide her with like a two-way radio that would communicate directly to him. And
Okay.
on January 30th, 1984, Ozzy heard some strange sounds coming over that radio. So he went straight to her house. He was able to look through a window and see Cindy laying on the ground. And at first he thought she was dead. The door was locked. It was deadbolted, actually. So he had to kick it in. And when he did, he found a note pinned with a paring knife through Cindy's hand.
No.
Yes. The note said, now you,
Oh.
right. The note said, now you must die. And then an expletive that I'm not really comfortable saying here, but see you next Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
When Cindy was questioned, all she remembered was someone attacking her and a needle going into her arm. When police arrived, they were suspicious. The door of the house had been locked and deadbolted from inside. Ozzy, remember, had to kick it down. There was no sign of forced entry anywhere else. Cindy did have a needle mark in her arm, but nothing had been injected. She had nothing in her system. Police also noticed blood on the floor that appeared to have been mopped up, which seemed like a strange thing for her attacker to do.
This is all strange. Like, none of this is, oh, well, that's normally what weirdo stalkers do. This is all weird. Like, this is unprecedented. You know what I mean? This is like uncharted territory. So who's to say what they would or wouldn't do?
That's a great point, Stephanie. That really is a great point because you're right. This isn't baby stuff. This is like serious. This is
I mean,
dead cats hanging in your yard. Like this is
exactly.
scary.
You're not dealing with somebody that's thinking logically or normally.
Right. Cindy was given a polygraph, and at the time it was reported she passed it. But later, the results were revealed to be inconclusive. And these new results would be revealed years later when the investigator who'd performed the test originally reviewed the results with a colleague and remembered that when he originally tested Cindy, he was feeling incredibly sympathetic towards her because of everything she'd gone through. And he thinks that may have colored his results.
To make it be inconclusive or to make it be she passed?
She passed. So he thinks originally he said she passed, but he's thinking that maybe he was just feeling sympathy for her, which honestly, we've talked about how polygraph tests are, you know, how faulty they are, right?
Yeah.
But I thought that was more from the person taking them. I thought like people taking them just have different abilities and some people can pass them or maybe you could fail one because you're nervous. I didn't realize that the person giving the test also made such a difference in the results. Did you?
I did. Polygraphs are so problematic because you know how they ask you all those normal questions at the beginning, like, what's your name? How old are you? Where are you from? Things that you should not be lying about. A lot of that is to just get your baseline. And then from the baseline, they try to see if there's any difference. But everyone's baseline is even different. So everything is very subjective. It really is. As a society, we really love to hang our hat on polygraph tests. But yeah, they're problematic all the way around.
Yeah, such a junk science, but still fascinating and we love them.
Absolutely. I always want to know about the polygraph, about the polygraph results, even though I know they are bogus.
That's right. Well, the harassment continued. One June, Cindy called Ozzy, and when he arrived, he found her hiding in the garden, saying someone had broken in and gone into her basement. And in the basement was Cindy's dog, Heidi, with string. It's okay. The dog lives.
Okay.
But Heidi did have string tied tightly around her neck. The string or rope appeared to have matched what had been found on the cats previously. Now, again, Heidi lived, but it did appear that she'd been hurt. I know, I hate it too. I didn't even want to say it. Which once again left Ozzy believing there's no way Cindy could have been responsible. She wouldn't have done this to her own dog. On the windowsill of the basement was a cigarette that did not match the brand Cindy smoked. And there was also a note found saying happy birthday with sexually explicit photos. And I will tell you, this cigarette being found on the windowsill of the basement, that's like the biggest piece of evidence for someone else being involved that I've found in all of these instances.
And sexually explicit photos just of strangers?
I didn't see the photos, but just kind of like everything else. Here's a photo of a corpse. Here's a photo of a bloody knife. Here's a photo of a woman with her throat slashed. Here's some, sexually explicit photos. Just more of the same kind of thing.
Wild.
Ozzy had given Cindy a panic button that she was supposed to carry with her at all times. The silent alarm, if activated, would notify Ozzy's security firm immediately, and Cindy always carried this alarm with her in her purse. She usually had it in her hands when she would get in and out of her car.
Yeah, I could see that.
1 October, Cindy activated the alarm, and police found her unconscious in her car, naked from the waist down, with her legs hanging out of the driver's side door.
What?
Her hands had been tied behind her, and duct tape was covering her face, and a black nylon stocking was tied around her neck.
Like the same black nylon from before?
Yep. Cindy was unconscious, and medical reports would say she was slipping in and out of a coma, but she did come out of it and make a recovery. Not long after that, another dead cat was found, but this time inside Cindy's home, laying on her staircase.
Well, I mean, the only person that would have access to the house would be Roy? Or
well,
Ozzy?
I don't think Roy would have had access to the house because he may have known where she lived, but they were separated. So I don't think he would have been able to go in and out. I don't necessarily know that Ozzy had a key because I know he had to kick in the door that one time when he found her. So if he had a key, he chose not to use it the time he kicked in her door. Now, one of the safety protocols that Ozzy and Cindy enacted was that Cindy was instructed to call Ozzy anytime she left the house, and then she had to call him again when she got back home. One night, Cindy called him to say she'd left, but then she never made that call to say she'd made it back to safety. Cindy was found 18 blocks away. She would tell authorities that she'd been walking her dog when she was attacked by a bearded man and a woman in a green van. She said they dragged her into the van where she was held down by 3 people. She could feel a needle being put into her arm, and that's all she remembered. The next thing she knew, she was walking up the doorsteps of a home she didn't recognize, and the man who lived in the home cut black nylon stockings off of her neck, and she was taken to the hospital where they found needle marks in her arm. That night, hospital staff remembered a man with a thick accent calling the hospital asking about their security procedures. So that's interesting.
But now she's saying there was like a team of people that abducted her?
Yep.
Okay, that is a big derivation. So we're going from one person not being in their right mind committing these acts to somewhere between 3 and 5 people doing this to her, like a team of 3 to 5 people, depending if you think the bearded man and the woman were part of the 3 people that held her down in the van. Like that's a big stretch. Is this like a hired hit or something? But it's not even a hit. A hired harassment? What is this?
Well, and here's the thing. There were over 100 reports made in Cindy's case. There's just no way I can share all of them. So I'm sharing some of the bigger ones, the ones where she was physically attacked. And from time to time in her report, she would say, I think there were 2 people. So it wasn't always one person that she reported, but this was the only time she was actually able to kind of describe people.
And most of that saying it was one person was just in my own mind, trying to think that there were 2 people that are disturbed enough to do this.
Right.
It's hard to wrap your head around even one person being disturbed enough to do this. But the idea that there could be 2 people disturbed enough to think this is a great idea
Right.
is very hard. That's very hard to wrap my head around.
Right. Because in a lot of the situations, she would say, I don't remember anything. I just saw white shoes, or I felt a needle going to my arm. So I guess, like you in the beginning, I assumed maybe it was just one person, but I guess we really don't know for sure.
I think it's just hard to think that there are multiple people doing these heinous acts.
Sure. Well, it's hard to believe even one person would do them. So multiple,
Well,
yes.
right.
Like I said, I could go on for hours about all of the different incidents Cindy reported. There were over 100 she reported. And again, kind of like how you said with the physical abuse and the marriage, if you report 100, how many more were there that you didn't think to report, or maybe you didn't even know were part of the collection?
I only slapped her twice.
Right, exactly. Investigators decided to put Cindy under hypnotherapy. And when they did, she, quote, unquote, I'm using air quotes, remembered some interesting things, like witnessing a double murder, that kind of thing. But unfortunately, during that session, she wasn't able to give any further information.
What is going on over there?
Well, later on, she had another hypnotherapy session, and this time she described being on a boating trip with Roy. Now, remember, all of this story I'm going to tell you right here is coming up in a hypnotherapy session. So whatever that consists of, I'm assuming she's hypnotized. She's not, awake telling this story. In this session, she remembered being on a boat with Roy on this boating trip. And then Roy tied the boat up somewhere in the Gulf Islands. And then Roy left the boat for a while. She stayed on the boat. But then she started hearing shouting coming from the distance, and she yelled back, but no one answered. So Cindy decided to go onto shore, and when she did, she found a log cabin. And when she walked inside, she saw two people, a man and a woman, dead on the floor, and Roy was standing above them holding a bloody knife. Cindy remembered she ran out, but Roy chased her and grabbed her. She said she blacked out, and the last thing she remembered was waking up and seeing Roy chopping up the bodies with an axe.
Oh.
Now, police obviously investigated these claims. They found no missing persons from around that time in the Gulf Islands, and they couldn't find the log cabin Cindy described. And Cindy's sister Melanie would later testify that when Cindy told her about the alleged murders, the details were completely different. But to be sure, police decided to record a phone call between Cindy and Roy where she confronted him about this attack. Cindy called Roy and told him she remembered that he killed those two people. And Roy's response was that he'd been informed by his lawyer not to discuss anything about Cindy with anyone. In Roy's defense, if he wasn't responsible for everything that had been happening to Cindy, think about it, he too was kind of being harassed. I mean, he's being contacted by police every time something happens to her.
Yeah, and also, I do have problems with that too. If Roy really is the guy, fine. But there's such a danger in singling out Roy because that means you may not be looking into other people.
Right. In this phone call, Cindy also told Roy that she knew it was him who had been harassing her. He let her know that he was a victim too, and he said he had not contacted her in over 18 months. He went on to threaten to sue her for defamation if she continued the allegations. And during this call, the only threats Roy made to Cindy were with legal retaliation. But authorities thought, okay, if Roy's our guy, this phone call might cause him to get angry and retaliate with an attack of some sort. Or maybe leave a note, something, right?
Right. Or, chop her up with an axe.
There you go. So Cindy's home, Roy's home, and two other unnamed individuals were put under 24-hour surveillance. But after 5 days with absolutely no movement and no attacks, their surveillance was called off. And then later that month, after the surveillance ended, Cindy found a package with black nylon stockings and a note reading, "Blood flowing freely."
What the heck with these black nylon stockings?
The stockings are a thing. The stockings are a thing.
I mean, I think stockings in general, we're talking about pantyhose, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, they're a thing of nightmares to start with.
Sure thing.
Just buying them, wearing them, having to put them on. Luckily, that's not a thing anymore. Thank goodness. But, most of our childhood was spent wearing these very uncomfortable hose to any kind of formal event. So, yeah, but what this reoccurring nylon hose is really strange.
Really strange. Really creepy. On August 5th, 1985, Cindy called the police to report the first of 3 fires set in her home. In December of that year, Cindy moved to Clay Smith Road in Richmond. She chose this particular house because it had no back alley. And at the same time, she painted her car, changed her phone number, and changed her last name legally to James. Just 10 days after moving in on December 11th at 6:20 p.m., Cindy was found in a water-filled ditch about 4 miles away from her home. She was wearing a man's glove and boot, and once again had needle marks in her arm. And this time there were some mild tranquilizers found in her system, and the only thing Cindy said she remembered was being tied up in a strange room. In April of 1986, Cindy's friends Tom and Agnes were spending the night when Tom woke up to the sound of a thump and then the smell of smoke. A fire had been set in the ground floor den of the split-level house. In the chaos, Tom noticed a man on the street, but when he tried talking to him, the man ran away. When they went to call 911, the phone lines had been cut.
Okay, they can't possibly think that Cindy is still doing this to herself.
Many investigators to this day believe that everything was done by Cindy.
Wow. I'm not saying it's not possible, but hurting her dog, putting her friend's life in danger, this is pretty twisted stuff.
Yeah, but you know what? It's twisted no matter who's doing it. It's twisted if Cindy's doing it. It's twisted if somebody else is doing it. It's twisted if a scary team of people's doing it.
Yeah.
Somebody crazy. Crazy. And I don't throw that word out, but somebody crazy is doing this.
Right.
Throughout the years, authorities and even Cindy's family believe she knew more than she would ever say. Cindy's mom, Agnes, once said, quote, "Cindy told me that after she was attacked, the knife was held at her throat, and she was told that if you talk, your sister will be next, and then your mother. So just keep quiet. Don't tell anything." End quote. When asked why, with more than 100 incidents, police were never able to catch the perpetrator on surveillance, Agnes went on to say, quote, "When the police were watching the house, we would say to them, well, if somebody's doing that, then sure as heck he knows you're there. And of course, nobody will do anything while you're sitting there and watching." End quote.
And I'm assuming nothing was ever done with that cigarette, the one from several incidences back that was found on the windowsill. The one that you said, I think this is an important piece of evidence.
If it was, nothing was ever reported.
Man.
Now, I do think Agnes raises some good points. If somebody's watching her this closely, that they know every time she moves, they know all of this.
Oh, of course.
They're going to know when they're being surveilled.
Oh, of course. Oh, yeah.
But it didn't matter. Cindy's doctor committed her to a local psychiatric ward. He believed she was becoming suicidal, which some might say was because she was experiencing mental health issues, if you believe she's doing all of this to herself. But
I think she should be getting mental health help regardless.
Right. Because this could make you experience some mental health issues going through all of this.
Absolutely.
10 weeks later, Cindy left the hospital. Cindy's father said she finally admitted to her family and friends that she knew more than she was saying. He said, quote, "She told me for the first time she was convinced who the perpetrator was. And in her own words, if the police can't solve this, I'll solve it for them." End quote.
Why doesn't she just tell him who it is? That I would like that. Can she just do that?
Right? On May 25th, 1989, Agnes and Tom arrived at Cindy's house for their scheduled card game, but Cindy's car was not in the driveway. Her drapes were open and the house was dark. Now, Cindy would have normally drawn the drapes as soon as the sun went down, so this was very unusual. At this time, Cindy had a basement tenant living in her house named Richard. So Agnes and Tom asked Richard if he knew where Cindy was. He said he'd seen her last around 4 p.m. as she left the house to deposit a paycheck and do some shopping. And this made sense to Agnes because Cindy had told her she would be shopping for her friend's son's 8th birthday. So Agnes and Tom drove to the shopping center where they believed Cindy was most likely to go. And sure enough, they found her car in the bank parking lot in the shopping plaza. They did notice that instead of being parked right up next to the building, she was parked a bit away from it, which was unusual.
I think if I was Cindy and I was not doing this to myself, I don't know that I would go anywhere alone ever.
I know. I don't think I would either. After locating her vehicle, the couple went straight to the RCMP station around 11 p.m. But they were told they couldn't report her missing because it hadn't been 24 hours.
Dun, dun, dun.
Now, they attempted to describe the unique situation and that the officers would be very familiar with Cindy's case, but the woman behind the desk refused to take the report.
Yeah, I feel like her case would be an exception, right?
It should have been. And it was.
Not to say, I mean, they shouldn't have to wait 24 hours to start with, but specifically in her situation.
Right. And it turned out that I think her case did raise some red flags because eventually they were able to get a patrol car dispatched to the bank parking lot.
Oh, good.
And their officers found a line of blood coming down the driver's side door of Cindy's car. And Constable Anderson, who at the time was the head of the investigation, was called and made aware of the situation. Constable Anderson called Cindy's parents to advise them of the situation, and he directed Cindy's vehicle to be towed to the impound lot around 2 a.m. to be searched. At the same time, officers arrived at Roy Makepeace's home, but he refused to answer. He was acting almost paranoid. Eventually, he called the building manager to verify that these officers were who they said they were, and Roy eventually let them in, but remained paranoid and suspicious the entire evening.
So when Roy was saying he is also being harassed, I took that to mean he was being harassed by the police. Could he have also been saying he was being harassed by these people as well? Like, is he getting threatening messages? Is that why he was being paranoid?
Well, actually, good catch there, because I think it's a little of both, to be honest.
Yikes.
Right. So Roy explained to officers that the first 18 months after his and Cindy's separation, things were good. They remained friends. They even hung out from time to time. But eventually, Cindy had been advised to stop hanging out with him because her friends thought, hey, if this is the guy who's probably harassing you, maybe you should stop hanging out with him. And the relationship, just went downhill from there.
Sure.
This is when Roy told police that he, too, was getting scary messages left on his answering machine, and he was able to provide one in particular. And Stephanie, you have got to listen to this and then tell me what you think.
Okay, I'm gonna jump off here and listen real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, well, I will not be sleeping for a week.
It's terrifying, isn't it? So the voicemail says, Cindy, dead meat soon.
Yeah, but in like the creepiest, weirdest, most awful, sinister voice you've ever heard.
Right. It's like this scary, like demonic voice. And they're like, it's like, Cindy, like drawn out. I know.
Yep.
It's like, oh, it's terrifying.
Now, this could be a completely novice statement, but does this sound like a woman to you leaving that voicemail?
Oh, you know what? To me, I hear like a really scary man. Do you hear a woman?
I do hear a woman, but again, that could be just me. I'm actually curious now. If you hear a man, okay, guys, even more reason to go listen to this. Also, do not do it if you are afraid of the dark because that's awful. I think that might be the scariest thing we've ever posted on our Instagram, which is really saying something. I hear a woman, but you hear a man. Okay, interesting.
To me, I hear a man, but maybe I hear a man because to me, that's what's scary. To me, a scary man is just like if there's a creature in my corner in the dark, if I, am envisioning the scariest thing I've ever seen, it's like a tall, skinny, demonic looking man. So that's what I see when I hear this voice.
This almost sounds like a witch, like witch or something. I don't know. Ooh, I don't like whatever it is. It sounds evil.
Truly evil. And while in his home, Police noticed that Roy had many magazines about firearms and also lots of framed photos of Cindy. And when asked about one of his guns, Roy was able to show officers one of his guns. So Roy's getting some scary voicemails too that he just happens to be able to provide to the police. Now maybe that's because he saved it. Of course, if I got that voicemail, and back then this is answering machines, it's not voicemails, it's answering machines. So if I got that, I would certainly save it. Certainly.
I would burn the house down and move to another country. That's what I would do.
So I don't think it's unusual he had this to be able to play for authorities, but that's the whole picture. He also had photos of Cindy, and it wasn't described as like a shrine or anything, but he did have framed photos of his, estranged wife.
Well, they were together 15 years, and maybe they were just already up. I don't know. I mean, it's a little strange, but also maybe not.
Right. I'm with you. I think that could go either way. I really do. Now, in an effort
I'm sure all of my exes have photos of me hanging on the wall. I'm just sure of it.
Well, I know mine do because I sneak into their homes in the middle of the night and put them up.
Oh, and slash their pillows on the way out.
I'm coming for you.
Just don't leave creepy voicemails. That's a bridge too far.
Too far. Well, in an effort to find still missing Cindy, officers knocked on the doors of residents near Blundell Mall, which is where her vehicle was located, and they widened the search area to about 1.5 blocks outside of the mall. Aerial searches were performed of the area where her car was found. The shoreline and surrounding dikes were searched, as well as the outgoing flights at Vancouver International Airport. Police contacted cab companies and interviewed bus drivers along with store clerks at the mall, but no one remembered seeing Cindy that day. Cindy's car was thoroughly searched for hair and fibers. Now, in the parking lot where her car had been located, underneath her car had been her ATM card and her most recent deposit slip. Her heater had been on, set to defrost. Her car ashtray was closed with 6 cigarette butts of Cindy's brand. In the glove compartment was a scrap of paper with KDV 784 small silver written on it. And presumably this was a note of a license plate that Cindy must have thought was suspicious. It appeared to be an old note. It was located on the bottom of a bunch of papers. But the license plate was ran and no vehicles matching that description were found.
Again, imagine if Cindy really was being stalked all these years, like living your life, just suspecting everything.
Everything.
I don't think I would ever go anywhere alone again.
No, but I also couldn't live alone. They're coming into your house.
Right.
In the back seat of Cindy's car were 2 blue Sears bags from the mall containing a croquet set and wrapping paper. And this was the gift that Cindy had gone shopping for her friend's son. Receipts showed the croquet set was bought at $12.33 and the wrapping paper at $12.43. And I did see one report where the wrapping paper and the croquet set were purchased on different days, like one was bought the day before. I don't know that it matters, but we are trying to create a timeline here. So we know at the very least either $12.33 or $12.43 that day she made a purchase. There were also several Safeway grocery bags with groceries still in them in the trunk of Cindy's car, but there was no receipt for the groceries. So again, trying to narrow down this timeline, the investigators went to the grocery store and rung up everything that they'd found in her car. They were trying to get a total of what it would have cost, so then they could just match that up with the day's sales.
Oh, okay. That's clever.
Very clever. But they were unable to find a sale that date that matched that amount. So this made police believe perhaps the groceries were a red herring, because what if Cindy had gathered these groceries from her own home and then put them in her car to make it look like she had just spent a day running errands and then was attacked and went missing after going to the store, going to the bank, grabbing groceries.
Oh, okay. Possibly.
Cindy's deposit slip that had been found underneath her car showed that she deposited her check at 7:58 p.m. Now, this was before, Security cameras were at the ATM and on every corner. So police were looking for potential witnesses who may have seen Cindy. They did find one woman, Tracy McLean, who'd used the machine a little before 8 p.m., who remembered that when she was leaving the parking lot, a blonde woman with shoulder-length hair and a pink top almost drove into the side of her car. Tracy said the woman seemed startled by the near crash and turned and parked in the middle of the parking lot away from other vehicles. Remember, that's the area where Cindy's car was found. When police showed Tracy a photo of Cindy, she was unable to say for sure if this was the woman she'd seen. A man named Barry had used the machine at 8:01. He also remembered seeing a blonde woman walking across the parking lot, but didn't notice anything else out of the ordinary, and he too was unable to say if a photo of Cindy was the woman he'd seen. A few days after Cindy went missing, Richard Johnson, a life insurance agent who'd sold Cindy her policy, and Richard was also that man who lived in Cindy's downstairs apartment. He contacted police and told them that a man claiming to be Cindy's father had called his office to get details on her policy. Now, at first, the secretary who took the call started answering his questions, but then remembered that policy dictated they were not allowed to give life insurance information out over the phone. So she told Cindy's father to come into the office to get the information he was looking for. Otto Hack never went into the office and later denied ever making that phone call.
Yeah, but what a weird thing to call about.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're Cindy or whether you're a stalker, like what a weird thing. Like, what could explain that?
Well,
if it wasn't Otto.
I'll tell you, my mind actually went to Roy, because if anybody may have been on the receiving end of a life insurance policy, like I wondered if maybe it was an old life insurance policy, although it probably
okay,
wasn't.
yeah.
It probably wasn't because she bought it from her roommate. So it probably wasn't old, but I don't know. If you're stalking somebody to this degree, would you just find it exciting to like insert yourself anywhere?
Get in their personal biz.
Right. Like almost anything. Let me call and get questions about our life insurance policy. I don't know. I don't have the answers, but it was
Roy seems, even if he wasn't the stalker, I can see him just calling to say, I wonder if I might be a beneficiary.
Could be. That was where my mind went. But
okay, I could see that. And I could see that actually not being like something nefarious. You know what I mean? Like it looks like it is because of the string of weird things. Now Cindy's missing, like it's all weird, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that call was related to what directly just happened to Cindy.
Well, that's true, because how many times do we see like exes asking about a life insurance policy when it seems inappropriate? Maybe he's just seeing if there's anything in it for him and he has nothing at all to do with her disappearance.
That's kind of where my mind's going. I could be completely off base there, but that's where my mind's going. It's related, but not because he had something to do with her disappearance.
Sure, I can see that. After her disappearance, Otto became the media spokesman for her family and told the public how Cindy had been tortured for the last 7 years. And Cindy's case became a media frenzy. And of course, as a result, hundreds of tips came in and every tip was investigated, but there were still no real leads. On May 29th, Constable Jerry Anderson met with Cindy's parents, and Otto told him that as a former military man, he would be able to gather 500 soldiers from the Canadian Armed Forces to conduct a foot search, focusing on abandoned lots and houses in the area. But Constable Anderson's superior officer declined this offer, saying that police dog teams had already been brought in and the searches would be redundant. Unfortunately, this decision would prove to be a mistake, because on June 8th, Cindy's body would be found. She was barefoot, hog-tied, and laying in the fetal position on her right side with black nylons tied tightly around her neck. She was found beside an abandoned house exactly 2 weeks after she was reported missing. But because that amount of time had passed, there would be some questions we may never get the answers to. Now, Ozzy Caban, that investigator who'd been protecting her for all these years, had been out of town when Cindy was found. But when his son called to tell him, he took the first flight home and was able to visit Cindy's body on June 10th. And when he did, he noticed some blotching on her left side, which he believed to be post-mortem lividity. And we know this is where, due to gravity and the stop of the blood flow, the blood in the body settles at the lowest point in the body, leaving a dark discoloration. And once lividity has set in, it's set. So it sets, and then it wouldn't matter if you move the body, it's still going to stay where it was. But this discoloration was on Cindy's left side, and she'd been found in the fetal position on her right side. So this would indicate that Cindy's body had been moved. Ozzy also found it incredible that Cindy could have been missing for 2 weeks, and he was expected to believe that her body had been about 65 feet from the sidewalk that whole time and no one had noticed.
Right.
Plus, the house was known to be a party house because it was abandoned, making it seem even more unusual that Cindy could have been there the whole time with so many people potentially coming and going. So Ozzy believes Cindy must have been killed somewhere else, and then her body was moved to this location. And seemingly confirming his theory, there didn't appear to be any sign of animal predation, which one would expect to see in a body that had been exposed for so long. June 12th would have been Cindy's 45th birthday, but instead her friends and family spent it preparing for a memorial service that would be held just 2 days later on June 14th. Now, for the service, police hid a video camera to catch the faces and the license plates of everyone in attendance, and noticeably missing was Cindy's ex-husband, Roy.
I keep going back and forth. Is he the guy? Is he not the guy?
Roy's weird. I think it's weird he wasn't at her service. I understand at this point things aren't good, but I don't know. I think there's some things you just suck it up and you go.
Yeah, and I feel like, I mean, if you got pictures of her in your house, like you go to their funeral.
I agree. I agree. The day after her service, the headlines in the news caused shockwaves among Cindy's friends and family. The police announced that though they were still investigating it as a homicide, they believe that Cindy's death was self-inflicted.
How?
Girl,
How?
let me tell you. Toxicology results would indicate that Cindy's cause of death was 10 times the legal limit of morphine, plus another 7 tranquilizer-type drugs, all of which Cindy had either been prescribed or were available to her at her job. But there was no vial or syringe anywhere near the scene. Plus, Cindy had been hogtied, so how could she have done that herself with all of those drugs in her system?
And have nylon tied around her neck.
Right, and the nylon went around her neck 3 times.
Yeah, no, something ain't right.
Dr. Sheila Carlisle, who performed the autopsy, found a needle mark on Cindy's right arm. So again, how could she have injected all those drugs and then managed to hide the vial and the syringe and then tie herself up?
And possibly have moved her body, like herself.
Right. The autopsy was not able to provide an exact time and manner of death, with the coroner claiming that if she'd been found earlier, there would be less decomposition and, of course, a better chance of determining the time of death and also the manner of death.
Yeah, I feel like this is a tough one. I don't know. I can't be too hard on the officers in this case. It's just such a weird set of circumstances. I don't know if they were wrong to not look. I don't think they were being like totally derelict, but it is really unfortunate.
Really unfortunate. And days after Cindy's body was found on the fuel tank beside the abandoned house where she had been located, someone spray painted the words, quote, "Some bitch died here," end quote, along with an orange line that had been spray painted from the tank to the place where her body had been found, and then an orange outline of a body was spray painted on the ground.
Well, that's crazy.
The question is, was this her killer? Or was this just some teenager who liked to party at the abandoned house? It could go either way, I really think.
Could her body have been moved by these teenagers that like to party at the house?
Potentially. Here's the thing. I think we don't know. So I
Yeah.
don't think we can say absolutely not. At the same time, I don't think we can say yes, it absolutely.
Sure.
The circumstances surrounding Cindy's death were so bizarre, it culminated in a 40-day coroner's inquest. And during this inquest, doctors who'd previously treated Cindy would testify that they had diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder as well as other disorders. One even saying dissociative disorder. Now, have you seen the movie Secret Window with Johnny Depp?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I don't want to spoil it for you because it's a good movie, although the movie is more than 20 years old. So if you haven't seen it, then
Yeah, but it's got 20 years ago Johnny Depp in it. So clearly I'm going to see it.
okay, since Stephanie hasn't seen the movie, I'm not going to spoil it because for the rest of you, I was going to give you like a warning to skip ahead for 30 seconds. But if you've seen the movie Secret Window.
You see how she just like toss shade at me? She's like, well, now since Stephanie has ruined this part of my script by not having seen this movie 20 years ago. So I guess I'm assuming that this movie has some examples of dissociative personality disorder.
It does. And if you've seen the
Okay.
movie, you know what I'm talking about. And Stephanie, go see the movie so we can discuss further. For all the reasons, it's a good movie.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that I ruined that for you, Cynthia. I'll do better next time.
It's just a perfect example of what could have been happening to her. That's the only reason why I'm like, oh man, that's a bummer. It's literally like a perfect example.
No, I want to go see it now. I will.
Okay.
I will see it and we will discuss.
All right, perfect.
Tell me the name again. Secret Mirror?
Secret Window.
Oh, Secret Window. Okay.
Secret
I'm
Window.
on it. I'm on it.
So during the inquest, officers would testify that in all of the years of incidents, again, no shred of evidence proving anyone other than Cindy had been involved had ever been found.
I have to admit, that part is really weird.
It's really hard to swallow.
And then really, really is for years, literally years. And we're talking law enforcement, friends of hers, lovers of hers, her ex, like no one saw anything.
Right. Now, a few people, some of her friends were like, yeah, we were there when the doorbell rang and then a window cracked.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Right.
But not enough, but not for the bulk of it.
Not for like the huge stuff. Yes, somebody would get a call from time to time. There were times where she wasn't at work and she would get calls at work. But if you were doing this yourself, I would arrange those things, quite frankly.
Well, you could arrange those things. She could be the one calling Roy.
Exactly. And remember all the times that Cindy reported someone breaking into her house?
Yeah.
Officers testified that those scenes never looked quite right. For instance, sometimes when Cindy said someone had come in through a basement, like through the window, the window would be found cracked open, but the dust and the cobwebs wouldn't be disturbed like they should have been if someone had really entered through the window.
Oh.
And then how about that time when she was found with a note stabbed through her hand? Our hands...
How could anyone forget?
Right. Well, first of all, how could anyone do that to themselves? Like, honestly, truly, how could you do that to yourselves? But our hands are really convoluted parts of our body. There's a lot of bones and tendons and veins and arteries in our hands. And somehow the knife went through her hand and avoided all of those important parts. So what are the odds of that? I think they're a lot better if the person who stabs you is a nurse and trying not to hit all of those important parts, even if that person is yourself.
Oh, gross. I don't know. It's just really giving me the heebie-jeebies.
Right? Is that impossible? No, but I do think that's interesting.
Of course it is. Of course it is. And very compelling. Of course.
In the inquest, we learned that Cindy's childhood had been questionable. Her father, Otto, allegedly ruled the home with an iron fist. His children testified that he drank way too much and would beat them with a leather strap. But apparently Cindy was his favorite, and he only hit her with the strap twice. When Otto got up to testify, his two other daughters walked out of the courtroom. So this raises the question, was there some major childhood trauma that caused Cindy to suffer and then create these events herself. Let's say Cindy's responsible. Let's say she's responsible for everything that's happened to her. There's a theory that something traumatic happened to her, and whatever that traumatic thing was involved black nylons. Now, remember at the beginning of this episode when I told you she had that fiance that nobody ever met, nobody ever saw, and he died in this really traumatic way?
Yeah, he had terminal cancer and then committed suicide.
Right. So there's even a question as to whether or not he was even real.
Oh, now that is wild.
The big question for me in this case is, how would it have even been possible for Cindy to have taken her own life in the manner that she died? She died with 10 times the legal limit of morphine in her system as part of an 8-drug cocktail. And there was a needle mark in her arm, but no vial or syringe anywhere. Doctors testified that if Cindy had injected herself with these drugs, she would have been dead within 10 minutes. So how could she have positioned the nylons around her neck and then hog-tied herself in that amount of time? And these were not like sloppy bindings. They were well put together knots that were restraining her. Remember how she was found barefoot, but her shoes weren't at the scene?
Yeah.
The bottoms of her feet were clean, but she would have had to walk there if she'd put herself there alone. And that just didn't make sense given the area she was found.
Right.
Now, at the inquest, it was alleged that Cindy may have taken these drugs orally, which even if they had been taken at the same time orally, she probably would have lived for an hour, giving her time to set the scene. If she'd taken them at different times, she would have lived even longer, even more than an hour. The coroner, Dr. Carlisle, believed that the needle mark that she found in Cindy's arm was actually a withdrawal mark, not an injection site. So it was suggested that perhaps Cindy had drawn some of her own blood, which she would have known how to do. She's a nurse. And then dripped that blood down her car door to make it appear she had been attacked.
Oh, shoot.
Right?
Oh.
Ultimately, the coroner ruled that Cindy's death was not suicide or an accident or a murder. It was determined she died of an unknown event. But Cindy's family, of course, believes someone is getting away with murder. So, Stephanie, those are the facts of Cindy's case. And I'm telling you, I don't know what to think. I went into this being like, there is no way. There's no way that she did all of this to herself. But I don't know. Honestly, other than kind of the bare feet is like a big thing for me, and I cannot figure it out. But almost everything else can somehow be explained away in this totally bizarre explanation. It's wild.
I agree, Cynthia. I think I'm leaning she could have done this to herself. As weird as that is, because I did not go into this thinking that.
No, me neither. Me neither. Now, there is a part of me that wonders if both could be true. I do believe she's had some mental health issues her entire life, right? We've got doctors coming forward saying that. So what if, say, Roy, let's use Roy for an example. What if he knew about these, which you would? What if he did some of these things to her?
Would he have been able to get some of those drugs?
I don't know. I mean, he's a doctor. He's a psychiatrist. So
That's true.
I don't
that's true.
see why he couldn't. But I don't know. Like, what if you have somebody that you know is susceptible? Okay, so susceptible to fear, to ideas, and then you start torturing them. Really? Could that lead this person to ultimately take their life after years of being tortured? Then, of course, there is the whole dissociative personality disorder, which only one doctor said he believed that she had. But that's, an example of that could be where someone just creates a scenario that they believe to be happening, unaware that they are the cause of it. So there's that idea that perhaps she doesn't even know that she's doing these things if she's the one doing them. So she's actually really terrified but she's doing it.
Wow.
Or that she was doing it for attention. There were doctors that came forward and said she just believed she was doing it for attention.
Yeah, this truly is like, I mean, truth is stranger than fiction. I feel like that's where I'm coming to in this.
It's
Wow.
totally bizarre. And I don't know how I feel about it. I will tell you, I hate thinking that she may have done this to herself, because I am really, really bothered by the idea that I could potentially accuse a victim of
Yeah.
lying. Like, I really get bothered by that idea. I really don't ever want to do that.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know. I think the fact that for 7 years, even with surveillance, even with all of this stuff, we never caught anybody. Nobody ever saw
Nothing.
anything.
No DNA evidence. No one slipped up. Nobody saw anything.
Right.
Even Ozzy, who was on top of it there all the time, never saw anything.
No.
Now, it's interesting that his take on it is that he thinks she was being completely truthful.
Yes, but then I also have to ask, and this is nothing against Ozzy, but I have to ask, well, if that's how you're getting a pretty nice paycheck, it
Right.
behooves you to believe that she is in danger and that your services are needed to protect her.
Okay, fair point. Fair point.
Yeah, this is a wild one, and I truly don't know what to think. I think that it's absolutely possible that she was murdered. I think that's possible, of course, that she was stalked and murdered. I also think it's possible that she did it to herself. And I think it's possible that there, like I said, there was a little bit of both going on. I think somebody could have been feeding off of her insecurities, for lack of a better word. You know, I think if you were an estranged husband who wanted to win this woman back, perhaps scaring her and making her feel like she needs to be in the arms of a big, strong man, you know, I can see somebody attempting to do that. I don't know. I can see this playing out many different ways. But no matter what the truth is, wow, it's wild.
Oh, it's twisty and turny for sure.
I do believe one thing I can say for sure. Maybe this will ultimately help me lead to a conclusion. I do believe that Cindy believed she was in danger, being attacked. If she was somehow behind this.
Like, even if it was her own brain.
Yeah, even if it was. Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't know all the different things that could cause a person to behave in that way and not even know they're doing it. But I don't know. I think Cindy was pretty compelling. I think she was trying to. I think she was really, truly scared.
That's really sad. That's really sad to think about.
It is. But then at the same time,
in either situation, it's very sad.
It is. But then here's my other thing. At the same time, she did some things that even I wouldn't do, and I'm not being stalked. I don't go to an ATM at night. I just won't.
Well, right. A lot of these things are just a little unusual. But isn't there this idea of like, I'm not going to stop living my life just because somebody's stalking me? You know what I mean? It's like, you still have to keep living. And she'd been living with it for years. Like, what is she supposed to do? Just become a hermit?
No. And I'm not, and I don't ever want to come across as like that I'm victim blaming either. I'm not victim blaming at all.
Oh, no. I'm just saying, what was her other option? Because I think what you're saying is completely valid.
Right. I'm just saying, when I left my house, came back to, dead cats hanging in my yard, I probably wouldn't be going out at night. I probably wouldn't be walking my dog at night. I would have somebody staying with me or living with me. And maybe that's why she got a tenant.
Yeah. Well, she had Pat for a little while and then the tenant. Yeah.
To have somebody there. So all of that could make sense. But I just know that it's bizarre. It's bizarre no matter what happened. It's crazy. But I think we should focus on some positive and talk a little branch of hope.
I was wondering where you're going there. I'm like, that is a big but. Well, today is our branch of hope, as you just introduced. This case heavily highlights the dangers of stalking. Now, while we are not sure in Cindy's case where we land on if this was an unfortunate case of mental illness or whether she was actually being stalked, which could be a real possibility, we do know that countless amount of women and occasionally men are stalked here in the United States. And as we know, anyone can be a victim of stalking. A majority of stalking victims are stalked by someone they know, a current or former intimate partner, acquaintance, or even family member. So today we are focusing on Spark. Spark solely focuses on stalking awareness and prevention. They define stalking as a pattern of behavior directed at a specific person that would cause a reasonable person to fear for the person's safety or the safety of others or suffer substantial emotional distress. And Spark is cool. Now that's SPARC. And they work on helping victims of stalking to connect with a community of supporters and also attorneys who are well versed in stalking litigation, in stalking laws. As we know, stalking laws actually have a long way to go towards protecting people. They are slowly increasing in protection against stalking behavior. We've seen that over the last few years, and we'll get more into that as the episodes go on this month. But Spark helps to connect victims of stalking with attorneys that can help them, with attorneys that can speak with law enforcement and actually get the stalking to cease. I can't imagine going through a situation where you are being harassed for years. Cynthia, years in many of these cases.
Well, and with no one believing you.
With no one
Cindy's
believing
case.
you. And in many ways, even if they do believe you, law enforcement really has their hands tied on what they can do, again, because of these laws.
Right.
So Spark works with lawmakers to try to increase penalties for stalking. And then again, helping to find resources for victims of stalking and also helping to, again, define what stalking is. I think that's kind of where we need to start is what is stalking, what is not stalking, because it can take many different forms, as we saw just in Cindy's case, right?
Right.
If you feel like you are a victim of stalking and would like to get more information about Spark, head to stalkingawareness.org. And we'll leave their information on our social media account as well, Instagram in particular at the Dark Oak Podcast. And know that a portion of all of our earnings for this month from both our Patreon and our sponsors will go directly to Spark to further their mission of helping victims of stalking. I hope none of you have been in a situation where you are in fear for your safety or in fear for your life. And again, as Spark has defined it, many of these stalking cases are from someone that you know. And I find that is almost more chilling because it's someone that knows you, knows your buttons, so to speak, but also those fear things. Like, what are those things you're most fearful of? And they can really use that to cause a lot of emotional distress.
I'm so thankful that we can partner with Spark this month and hopefully help a lot of people who need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing awareness to this very twisty, turny case, but also just to the subject of stalking. We know it affects so many women and some men around our country. And we are, like you said, very proud to partner with them. And we wish them the best. Again, if you need services, please feel free to reach out to them. And if you are one of our Patreon members, know that a portion of your subscription, again, on our Patreon, we have a $2, a $5, and $10 tier. Know that a portion of your proceeds, actually a pretty large portion this month, is going directly to Spark. So we appreciate your contribution. It's going towards doing great things in your community.
That's right. Hey, thanks so much for listening, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I will be back next week with a really fun episode, which I think we need after this one. I feel like this one was a really heavy one, Cynthia.
Pretty heavy.
But next week, I'm going to go into the strange phenomenon of the Mandela effect.
Oh, I will be very interested in hearing about this because, well, yeah, for all the reasons.
For all the reasons. What a weird, mystery, yes, but just function of our brains. I can't wait to get into it with you.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. All right, Shiver Seekers, we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Creep for our amazing music.